How's it going, everybody? Tyson Kilby here, and I've been waiting to do this video for an extremely long time. I've been getting messages for quite a while, basically new gun owners, people who've even owned guns for a while, are asking, how do you get good? What is the roadmap to getting good, being proficient with firearms? So that is the topic at hand today. I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and there'll be more like it. So let's dig into it. Regardless of who I'm training, whether it is an absolute beginner or somebody who's been shooting for a long time, I pretty much give the same roadmap to becoming good at firearms to everybody. Now, where they are in the map is dependent on them, but the path to get there is really based on a foundation of a couple of things. Number one, first and foremost, to get good at firearms, you have to have a strong understanding and full-time practice of firearm safety. That's pretty much the bottom line. That's the first thing that I start with pretty much everybody, is understanding firearm safety. Now, what does that mean? It means a lot of different things, but where you start and where many people that are in the firearms industry know and understand to start is the 4 cardinal rules of firearm safety, the pillars, the foundation of all firearm safety. Now, you'll go to ranges and you'll see posters on the wall and range rules, and they can sometimes have 30, 40, 50 rules, and all of them are good rules, but the reality is it's very difficult to remember 30, 40, 50 rules. But if you base firearm safety off 4 cardinal rules and you commit them to memory and you make it part of your everyday practice, whether you're shooting in competition or shooting for practice or shooting in a self-defense scenario, these 4 rules go with you wherever you go. And they are, starting with number 1, never point your gun at anything you're not willing to shoot or destroy. It's that simple. And it seems that simple, and not only is it that simple, but the thing that I think people mess up the most on that is they think that only applies when you're shooting. In other words, I have my blue gun here. A lot of people are pretty good about pointing their gun safely downrange while they're shooting. Well, that's not the only time you need to worry about this rule of firearm safety. Like I said, these rules exist at all times. So you shoot, you focus downrange. When you're done, you still have to understand, and what I tell people, whether I'm teaching children, teenagers, adults, whoever, envision that there's a laser that extends to infinity, and anything that comes in contact with that laser that you're not willing to shoot, you must remove your muzzle immediately. That applies after you're shooting. When you turn, you've just flagged everybody that came in the path of that muzzle. And I think that's the most common mistake for people, is once they get out of shooting mode, they don't realize that this rule lasts at all times. So it's something that needs to be trained, but it needs to be trained from the very beginning, is never point your gun at anything or anyone that you're not willing to shoot or destroy. And to help with that, picture a laser extending from your gun, and anything that comes into contact with that you're not willing to shoot, you've got to remove it immediately. All right, the second rule of firearm safety is keep your finger off the trigger until you're on target, ready to fire. That's the only time that your finger should be on the trigger of your gun, is whether you're engaging, about to engage a target, or just finish engaging and assessing for a follow-up. That's it. If you're moving, clearing a malfunction, reloading, drawing, doing anything else, your finger should be straight and above the trigger guard. This is the trigger guard. Your finger should be straight and above that trigger guard. This is not natural. And if you ever watch TV, you'll pretty much see most people, most of the actors on screen, holding the gun like this. This is obviously a huge, I wouldn't say obviously, this is a huge mistake for a lot of reasons. Number one, if I get scared, there's a good chance that I'll have an unintentional discharge. If I'm holding the gun and I trip and fall, good chance that I'll have an unintentional discharge. I could be fighting somebody off, not ready to shoot, and under stress, squeezing with one hand might have a sympathetic response. Those are just a couple of examples of why it's a really bad idea to have your finger here or even here when you're not actually on target, ready to fire. So the trained response that you need to develop is putting your finger high above the trigger guard, straight on the weapon, until you're on target, ready to fire. Next, treat all guns as if they're loaded. It's that simple. You don't have to develop separate responses for unloaded guns or toy guns or a fully loaded gun or a gun you're not sure about if you always treat all guns as if they're loaded. It's critical. It's a critical importance to develop one habit, which is a respectful handling of firearm, whether you know for a fact it's unloaded or not. And by the way, you should always know the condition of your weapon, but even when you know it's unloaded and you're practicing, treat it like a loaded gun. Okay? And finally, always be aware of your target, your backstop, and what's beyond it. This is, of course, important in self-defense situations where you may be legally justified in defending yourself, but you missed a target, you missed your target, and you shot someone behind the intended target, and an innocent person is injured. You're responsible for that round. But it also could come into play if you're just out on the land shooting and you don't have a high enough backdrop. You go and you shoot an innocent person in that context as well. You are accountable for every round that comes out of your gun, all the way up to and including its final resting spot. And that's a tremendous responsibility. So, one more time, and this is the basis for getting good at firearms, is understanding firearm safety and living and applying and making a habit of these 4 rules. Number 1, never point your gun at anything you're not willing to shoot or destroy. 2, keep your finger off the trigger till you're on target, ready to fire. 3, treat all guns as they're loaded. And 4, always be aware of your target, your backstop, and what's beyond it. That's something that you should review every time you shoot, whether it's in a competition, whether it's just in dry fire practice, any situation at all you can think of. So, safety first, safety second, safety last. So when it comes to firearms, I believe, and I have believed this for the years and years that I've been a firearms instructor, that it has to be built on a strong foundation of safety. So that's number 1. Once you have understood and developed a firm understanding of firearm safety, the next, I guess, secret, although it's not much of a secret at all, which I'll let you guys know soon, but the next secret to getting good at firearms is a strong foundation in the fundamentals of marksmanship. That's it. And I can't tell you guys how many times I've been in classes and I've asked, what is good shooting? What is advanced shooting? And I've heard a myriad of answers throughout the years from classes, and they'll say, oh, it's hitting fast multiple targets, it's being able to shoot with your offhand, it's all sorts of things. What people say is good advanced shooting. But the reality is that good, solid, advanced shooting really comes down to this: a solid mastery of the fundamentals. So that's it. Now, what are the fundamentals of marksmanship? They are these: grip, stance, sight picture, sight alignment, breathing, trigger control, and follow through. 7 fundamentals of marksmanship. And the reality is, no matter how advanced that you think you are at shooting or you ever want to become, really your level of expertise is based on your understanding and ability to apply these 7 fundamentals. Now, each of these 7 fundamentals would warrant a complete video all on its own. So I'm going to give a brief overview of each one and allow you to explore that further. So let's start with grip on a semi-automatic pistol. The essentials of grip. Number 1, good contact with the gun. Because remember, the grip is to control or mitigate the recoil of the gun. So I'm contacting the gun with my hand high on the back of the weapon here. Okay? The lower I am on the back here, you can tell when the gun recoils back, I'll have less control. So nice high contact here. Now I'm going to switch to this side. With this high contact here, I take my support hand with my wrist locked out and contact it with the weapon here. Notice how my thumbs are forward and my fingers are wrapping here. Okay? Grip is, to some extent, it's personal. You know, we all have different hand sizes, different gun size, different strength. So with grip, practice it, become very confident in your grip, and soon you'll find it. The most common mistakes, I would say, is having loose wrists and not having good firm contact with the gun. Okay, those are probably the 2 most essential things on a good grip. Let's move over to fundamental 2, stance. With stance, I know you can't see from this camera angle, but stance is essentially an essential part of your shooting platform. And what is your goal with that? Well, it's to be steady, but have the ability to be mobile if you were in a situation where you needed to run to cover or self-defense. So, with my knees bent, my weight slightly forward, think athletics, think sports. That is what I'm doing with a good stance here. Knees forward, toes towards the target, weight shifted more towards the center, and it's kind of a combat athletic type stance. So mix the stance with a good grip, with good contact with the gun, and that's your shooting platform. Okay? So now we'll move on to the next two fundamentals, and we'll talk about them together. Sight picture and sight alignment. Sight picture is what you're seeing, okay? So let me rewind. Let me do sight alignment first, because if what you're seeing isn't aligned, then your shot's not going to be on target. So, sight alignment. With most semi-automatic pistols, I'm talking iron fixed sights here, you have rear sights on the back, front sight on the front of the gun, and then you have a target, the three things you need to see. Now, to align your sights, essentially remember this. If these are the rear sights and here's the front sight, you want them all to be level. Okay? So when you're looking at the front sight and the rear sights, you want them to be on the same height, the same level. If the front sight's high, the gun will be oriented up. If it's low, low. You also want there to be equal space between the front sight and each left and right sight, rear sight. If the front sight is way closer to one side or the other, then the gun is going to shift left or right. So an easy way to remember that is equal height, equal light. So with your rear sights and your front sight, you want them to be aligned across the top with equal space in between. Now that's sight alignment. Sight picture is what you see. Now, I said it just now. You are seeing three different distances. You're seeing your rear sight, your front sight, and your target. Now, you can see all three of those distances at one time, but you can only focus on one. So which one do you focus on? Well, the answer isn't, I think, as simple or even as intuitive as you might think. The intuitive answer is your target. But the reality is, for marksmanship shooting, for precision shooting, where you have time and you're working on the fundamentals, it's actually better to focus on the front sight, the spot that's in between. I have this distance, and the target. I'm looking at all three, but I'm focused on the front sight. That's for your precision, accurate shooting. So, and it's something that you have to continually work on, because your intuition or your instinct is going to be to look at the target. And the interesting thing about that is it's not necessarily wrong to look at the target. If the scenario was that an intruder comes in the door and they're extremely close to you, then technically speaking, it would take too long and it would not be ideal to be focusing on the front sight. So in that scenario, it is better to be more target focused and have the sights flash up right in front of your eyes. So you see and you focus on the target in that scenario, in close combat type shooting. Now this conversation probably deserves a little bit more, but just remember this common theme. If you're working on pure marksmanship and you're wanting precision shooting and you have time and you're developing an understanding and a feel and a reflex for the gun, front sight focus is ideal. In situations where it's close combat type distance, it is acceptable and actually a better practice to have a flash sight picture where the sights come up, you see them, but you're more focused on the target. All right, guys, so grip, stance, sight picture, sight alignment. Now let's talk about the final three fundamentals: breathing, trigger control, and follow through. Breathing is pretty simple. I say that, but it's something that people, especially under stress, mess up all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the range and I've seen people basically holding their breaths like this. Well, their safety glasses start to fog up, they start to get tired, they start to shake. Not ideal. So whether it's in competition, whether it's in self-defense, or whether it's just practicing on the range, it's a very good idea to control your breathing. How do you do that? As I extend out to shot here, as I extend out to the target, and I breathe out fully, you'll notice a couple of things. Number one, there's more clarity in the whole situation of how I see, but more important than that is, on that out breath, that is sometimes referred to as your natural respiratory pause. That is when your body is the most still. That is an ideal time where, if you need to, you break the shot from a good shooting platform. So breathing. Again, much more to it than that, but very important fundamental and very important to remember when you're dry firing and at the range. All right, let's talk about trigger control. Interesting topic. With trigger control, let's talk about what not to do first. Number one, it's not a heavily moved yank, jerk, or even pull. I don't like to use the term pull. I like to use the term press. Remember, when you're firing a gun, it is ideal to take your finger. I like to use probably about the middle of the pad of the finger. Certainly not in the crease of the finger here, but the middle pad of the finger. And it is not so much a pull, it is more of a press. Okay? And it's a smooth pressure press. If you'll notice, when the shot braked, there was minimal movement in the gun. That's what I'm doing when I'm pressing the trigger. That does take practice. You will have a tendency to anticipate the shot, and you may have a tendency to, depending on your grip and the amount of pressure you pull, you may have a tendency when you pull the gun to move it one way or the other. And if that gun moves because of your trigger finger, even with your sights aligned, when that shot breaks, if that movement is there when it breaks, you'll be off target. So the ideal situation is with a minimal arc of movement, a nice smooth press with my sights properly aligned, I press the trigger. Okay, the final fundamental that I want to talk about today is follow through. What does follow through mean? Essentially, it means that when you break the shot, you're not done. When you nice smooth press, I have all the fundamentals in line, a good sight picture, good sight alignment, grip, stance, breathing, trigger control is good. The gun is going to go through its cycle of operation. It's going to come back. During that time, I'm resetting the trigger and I'm prepping for a possible additional shot. If I need to shoot again, great. If not, finger off the trigger. I can scan, I can assess, whatever I need to do, and then go back to the holster. All right, so grip, stance, sight picture, sight alignment, breathing, trigger control, and follow through. That was a brief overview of all of the fundamentals. There's much more to talk about, and you can kind of take each one into its own little nuances and details, and I'll do that in future videos, but those are the basics. As far as breaking it down even more, you can take one or two fundamentals and particularly work on that each time you train as you develop your confidence. For example, you could take the fundamentals of sight picture and sight alignment, and not only are you focusing on the front sight, now you're understanding that this is happening with your dominant eye. You're having to deal with, do you keep one eye closed? Do you keep both eyes open? Are you cross-eye dominant? All discussions for another day, but the point I'm making is that each of these fundamentals have their own subtle nuances to work on. But it all comes in time and practice. Speaking of practice, this right here, what I'm about to share with you, is something that very good shooters definitely know, and a lot of shooters need to know. One of the best ways, and I would argue the best way to get good at shooting, doesn't cost a lot of money. It does cost time, but less than you think. And that is dry fire practice. What is dry firing? Dry firing is essentially making sure your weapon is completely unloaded, separating all ammo from the room, and practicing drawing and any other function or any other type of firearms that you like to do. Reloading, clearing malfunctions, moving, all that sort of stuff. But it's practicing in a setting where you're not even at the range. For example, you could practice drawing your gun. You could practice clearing malfunctions, reloading, whatever you like. But it's this situation where you're not even firing live. You can pin targets on the wall, come up, practice, and come back. And the cool thing about it is, if you think about dry fire practice, what can you practice? Well, grip, stance, sight picture, sight alignment, breathing, trigger control, and follow through. So you can essentially practice all 7 fundamentals of marksmanship in a dry setting. Now, are you feeling the recoil of the gun? No. Does it completely take the place of shooting at the range? No. But you can spend 10 or 15 minutes 3 times a week, 4 times a week, heck, every day if you wanted to. And if you did that, you will rise to the level of the upper 1-2% of shooters anywhere just by doing that. which is amazing because a lot of people, they ask me, do I need to shoot 20, 30,000 rounds to be really good? And the answer is shooting does make you good, but dry fire practice is really the secret to being extremely good. Now, should you go to the range? Absolutely. Should you test what you're doing? Yes. But when you can't, dry fire is very good. And even when you can, supplementing your training with dry fire is the way to get really good. So to recap everything that I've said in this video that I've been wanting to share with students, friends, people who've asked for a long time is really the pathway, the roadmap to great firearms proficiency is understanding firearm safety to the highest level and making it habit forming and something that you know like the back of your hand and practice at all times, and a firm understanding of the 7 fundamentals of marksmanship. Once you have that, dry fire practice, I guarantee if you do this and go to the range when you can, you will be an extremely good shooter. Is there more to shooting? Sure. Reloading, clearing malfunctions, shooting and moving, manipulating with your offhand, one hand, use of cover, concealment, tactics, alternative shooting position. All of these things are part of it, but I can tell you this, in order to get good at any of those things, you have to have a firm understanding of safety and fundamentals. All right, guys. Personal Defense Mastery, it's out, it's on Amazon, it's an ebook or paperback. Check it out, it's been doing great. I've been loving the feedback so far, and I really appreciate it. I've re-edited my first book, Fundamental Handgun Mastery, where I go even deeper into some of the things we talked about today in the book. I'm so glad I get to do this video. I'm hoping to add in some live range drills for you to supplement it, but drop any questions, comments that you have below, and I can't wait to train with all of you guys soon.